Hey, good morning. It's Freemotion Fridays with Kate Quinn. Welcome. And we're going to do just a few background fills. We're going to focus on just some little tips about movement and also some ideas how you can vary things up in order to make it a little bit more exciting. So, if you have a simple design, but you make a change, then this will let you make it just a little bit more interesting, that type of thing. Okay, so we'll just give a second for people to sign in. It's right at 10 o'clock, and we've been on and off for a little while, so I'll share a couple tools. So recently I've actually sold quite a few of these. People have been asking about my different marking tools. This is the Boheen, I call it the fat chalk pencil. It's basically just a big giant piece of chalk, right? It's pretty short right now, mine is, because you can see I use it a lot, and it does erase really well. You can actually sharpen it with this little sharpener. I don't, only because I have a very fine marker if I need that. So for this one, I'm okay with it to be kind of fat, as far as the line. But it does have that available, and it comes with a bunch of extra lead. So this is how you would get it. And I usually try and protect this. I don't usually put that in my bag. I just take one in the pencil if I need to. And then if you're working on things that are lighter colored, it's important that you have a good marking that will show up well. So for example, obviously white chalk isn't going to show up on white. So if I need something that's going to show up really well, then we can use some of these other colors that'll show up on white. So this one right here is the air eraser. So this is the one that looks purple, and it has a roller ball on the tip. And I realized that for some reason, I don't know where mine are. I'm just getting back from California. So actually my sewing room is a complete and utter disaster, even with suitcases on the floor and boxes and everything else. But this is awesome, roller ball, and it's air erase. If you need markings to stay on for a longer time, this one is that blue type of marker, and the air erase doesn't stay on for a really long time. So sometimes you need those markings to just last a bit longer. This will remove with water. You cannot just leave it on there. You definitely want to get it wet to get those markings off. Don't iron it, the first time. Wet it, let it air dry. If you see any more blue marks, wet it and that way you'll have really good success with this one. The thing is, you don't want to iron those blue ink marks. There are some more complicated ways to get those out, but the simplest way is just to make sure it's nice and wet and you have them fully removed before you put any heat on your project. Okay, there's my spiel. All right, so I do use a lot of chalk. I think everybody has seen that in the past, and I'm going to use that today. I've got just this marker, and just so we can have the different options, I'm going to vaguely put a line in the middle, and one option will go on each side. Let's say that this is my seam allowance over here, okay? Or maybe the edge of my quilt. We always need somewhere to travel, and that can be in a seam. If the design is butted up to, say, another block or sashing and we need to end it, we can always travel in this line. Then we also have the option to basically split up anything that we want to. So if I want to, I can sort of make a random mark right here. Let's pretend that this represents a background area. So if I have two different either directions or density or designs right off the bat, then I'm changing that look and making that background more interesting. Some kind of change is a really great way to bring somebody's attention. So I'll start with just the first design. We're going to make it kind of simple. I'll pretend that this chalk line is my boundary and that I would be traveling in my boundary. If I'm trying to create that separation, I'm going to go ahead and stitch it in This is free motion. My feed dogs are in the down position. All movement is coming from me. This is capable. This machine is the M17 Janome M17 Continental, and it does have a stitch regulator. But I know a lot of people don't, so I want you to see how you move if you're doing the work. I'll travel down my line, and I'll move slowly initially. This is to anchor those stitches just in case I'm not coming back to this same spot. So at this point, I can cut these. You know, they're already tacked in. I can just get them out of my way. So usually I like to move a little bit away from my ruler foot because I can't cut the threads when they're right under there. So that's typically why you'll see I leave a little bit of the threads just for some time so that I can work. Now, the first technique I want to talk about, if I'm following this line, as I'm traveling right down this stitch, I need to make a really very strong and decisive change of directions. If I just sew down and kind of swoop over, it's going to be a rounded corner, and I want a really nice sharp corner. And I want you to see that here too. As I travel, I'm going to very decisively change directions here, and I want you to see that. So here I go. I'm actively pushing in the direction that I want to go. Okay. Now I don't have to stop, but I need to really decisively change my direction. Okay. And again, we'll put a little bottom boundary in here just because this doesn't go all the way to the bottom, and you wouldn't stitch right to the very edge of your quilt anyway, unless you had enough extra backing and batting out beyond there. Okay, so as I'm looking down here, I'm pushing opposite the direction that I want to go. So I'm trying to keep sort of a straight line. I'm not too worried about if it's perfect or not. And let's just fill this in. I don't care if this space is perfect, but I am looking here to keep my line a little bit parallel to the existing line. Okay, it might not be perfect, I don't care. Okay, and then follow the line and then travel again, decisively coming down and over. Now, we can just go ahead and fill all of these lines in, but that might get a little boring for us. If it's not boring for you, I think it would make an awesome fill just how it is. However, let's make the next line a little skinnier. So I'm just closing my foot distance a little bit, actively changing directions. And then if this was my seam, I would travel right down my seam. So let's talk about fabric management also. This piece is really small. Everybody sees that. I'm not trying to deceive anybody. If I have a big piece, as I'm moving along, I need the rest of this to come with me. So it's okay to grab some of your quilt. If I was having more fabric over here, I could literally pinch it. The way I recommend doing that is, let's turn this just a little bit so you can see better. A lot of people will say to roll up your quilt, right? Like this. And I've even got those bicycle clips from back in the day where you would clamp this, right? But what happens is this now is very rigid and it's not flexible. So if I want to move around, it's like a rolled up newspaper. It's very firm and it kind of doesn't want to go the way I want. But if I take my hand like this and I pinch like this, and I can actually grab my pinch like that, or if I need more, I can keep doing that. And now I can use that as a handle when I move. And when I'm done, if I let go, then no longer am I having any pressure on the sandwich and I can immediately go in any direction. So I'll show you as if I were going to pinch this. I'll put a little pinch on here. And again, looking for that foot, I want an active change of direction right there. Okay? And then traveling over and using my foot as the guide, parallel to the line, and moving over. All right, so these lines would all go in one direction, for example. Okay, so we don't have very much left to go. We'll just kind of fill this in quickly. So now a little variety, a little skinnier line, a little fatter line, maybe two skinny lines. It won't matter. And I don't need the lines to be exactly the same, either one. Okay, so here you can practice trying to sew right on your existing stitch line. So you want to look inside your foot, or if your foot is open, kind of choke up so that you're looking directly downward on your foot. I'm pretty far away because of my equipment, so I recommend that people kind of choke up on it, get really in close. A machine like this that has this cutaway, the purpose of it is so that you can look down right into your foot. And that will help you if you're traveling over existing stitch lines, or allow you to really see right where the needle needs to go. So you can see when I'm trying to track back on an existing line, maybe I go a little bit slower so that I can see what I want to do. Now, doesn't that look pretty cool? You know, it's not a complicated fill. It's pretty simple, but as a new sewer, if you struggle with Freemotion, this is a very simple design. And just by changing directions now, if we go another direction, now we've created some visual interest. So right here, as we change directions and maybe sew this way or put in a different fill, then we create that visual dynamic that's going to make people look here. So instead of your background just being straight lines, straight lines, straight lines, now we've just created a little bit of interest. And we can continue to doing this. If I want, I don't have to make this whole section like this. I can create another division and go this way and then change directions again. So very simple, but also very practical and a very classic design, very clean, great for modern, great for men, and just a great fill. So let's change direction. So we're kind of on this angle. So we can, go a different angle like this. One of the things I want to do on this next section is, as I start, I'm going to add just a little change. Okay, we'll go this way. And I'm just going to put in a little hump. And then we'll just keep on going, right? So again, if this is my line and I'm changing, what have I done here? Now, instead of having the lines be straight, we've put a change. This change could be anything. You could put a circle, you could put a swirl, anything you want, even a wavy line. But you'll see that the dynamic is really going to change. So as we go, nice, easy rhythm, okay? This is where I'm looking at my spacing as I go. So I want to just vaguely kind of keep that nice. Here again, looking for that spacing. Now, as we come up to this right here, what do we have to do? Right? This now is the travel line. That's going to let us move along the existing line. So technically, I always tell people how important it is to be able to stitch over an existing line. So when I started, I'm just like everybody. I'm like, oh my God, I have to stitch over that line. I already sewed it. Don't cross the streams, right? But if I don't practice traveling on an existing line, I will never get good at it. So don't avoid it. Anytime that you have the opportunity to try stitching over another line, just look inside the foot really close. Just move smoothly but firmly. Don't stutter. Make sure that you actively have some motion on the needle. The slower that the needle is moving, it actually pins you into place and makes it much more difficult. So let's keep going on our little adventure here. Now, if I don't want any more curves, I can just build up and follow the design. Okay. And now my curve is set. And if I want to follow part of it, I can. I don't have any rules there. It's my choice, right? So now, if I want to here, I can fill in until we can go straight across again, and that will just change the look a little bit. Okay, so I'll fill that in just a little bit. Actively change directions, nice and smooth. Okay, and I can just keep filling this in. This is really close to where I want to stop, but I can actually just change directions a little bit if I want to. So as we get to this next one, let's go ahead and make a little skinnier line. Okay, so we'll make these a little skinnier. We'll make 2 skinny ones. And then we'll make a bigger one. And I can start putting another curve in. Notice how my hands are flat. I'm activating all of this movement here. I do have the glider on underneath, giving me that smooth surface. If your hands are dry, as they brush against the fabric, then they're going to be a little bit slick. They won't have any tack. Sometimes even something as simple as a little hand lotion can really make a difference. So you can put that on. If you have gloves, I absolutely recommend those. You'll never see me using those because I have some nerve damage, especially in my right hand. So I can't feel the fabric if I have gloves on. I can't feel as much sensory input. But for those people that want a little extra grip and they feel that that's a good use for them, they also have gloves that have the fingers open. So maybe you can still have this, but have a little flat pads that will give you a little bit more support and a little bit more grip on the fabric. All right, so let's put a little curve on this side. And as I travel over on this side, I'll just parallel those other lines. And I think we need one more right here. Just a little one to kind of close the gap. So I'll tack it off in the existing stitch line, 5 or 6 stitches moving in the travel line, and now we'll tie off. First, needle and foot, raise it up. That relieves all the pressure on the thread. It's not tight anymore. I can pull this out and I can lengthen the bobbin thread by doing that. So we'll hold this top thread and then line up your needle right where you left off, needle down and up. Now, notice that I've held on to this loop the whole time. Watch as I pull this out a little bit. There is that bobbin thread, and now I can cut it. I've already tied it off, so it's secure, and there should be no thread on the back. If there is, all that means right there is that I didn't pull this up to the top as much as I needed to, but I can still cut it off, and it's still secure right there. So then we'll just get rid of any loose threads. Okay, now, so we created just some geometric interest right here. We're not afraid to change lines. I think that if I evaluated this and I did this again, I don't like this curve as much. I love this sharp change. So I would be careful about putting in a random curve like this. I would put a much more intentional one and make this angle around it. I like this and this much better. So this is me evaluating my own work, figuring out what I like, what I want, what worked well, what didn't. And I'm not afraid to do that. And you shouldn't be either. You're the designer. If you don't like it, you get to make a choice and do it how you want it. Now, let's go ahead and move over to this other side. So what we're going to do on this side is the lines are basically going to all sort of move in the same direction, but we're going to put the changes this way. what happens with this is a lot of different movement and different angles. So it's a lot more energy, and depending on the quilt, it can add a little bit of chaos. I mean, if you have solids, this is great, but if you have really busy things, then maybe that's not the best. So let's go ahead. If I was going to do this and I had my seam allowance, I may not want to butt this right up to the exact line. I do always like to have some segregation of designs. So here I'll just create a little space for myself, and we'll define this area before we start. The other thing that is going to give me is if I need a travel line, now I have one. And the travel line again could be just something as simple as your seam, but I typically don't like my designs to butt right on top of each other. Okay, so we'll just create that little space there. I'm just pushing away from myself. I'm moving forward along the sandwich, and I'm literally pushing right away from me. Notice that both of my hands are moving in the same direction, and they're in the same line. One is not moving in front of the other or this way. I'm keeping the sandwich straight and steady, and now when I get down to the bottom, I can start moving along. So again, we're going to use a little bit of a boundary here as a travel line. Okay, so that would be my seam that I could travel up if I need to. So let's put the bottom boundary in just so you can see it. We'll just cross over. Both of my hands are working together. They're moving straight across, and I'm trying to just push the whole sandwich together, just going that way. And then I'll move up, and I'll just move up a little bit. The very first thing that I want to do as I adjust this is I'm just going to put kind of a wavy line. Okay, so, and I'll kind of touch the bottom. We'll make this one not too deep. Okay, I'm in my travel line, and I'm going to move up on whatever allowance that I have. Again, I can try making all of these the same distance apart. However, I think that if you have trouble doing that and you then have one that isn't correct, I think it's much more fun for the eye to have differences. So I'm not going to try really hard to make them all the same. Big, little, mess around. Don't feel like you have to follow everything so perfect. So as I come out, we'll make this curve maybe a little bit deeper. This one will come a little closer. And if they kind of close near the edge, I don't care. Perfect. Let's just keep on going. Let's move up the line a little bit. Okay. Now let's make a little bigger gap, and we'll just kind of smooth it. Dip in here a little bit more, get a little closer, and then wing out. Make this one a little deeper, and then come back in. Okay. It's okay. Don't worry. It's all going to look amazing. As we keep going, we'll just keep on going. Okay, now I have a pretty big dip right here. This is a really good place that if I want to throw something in, this is a good place. Okay, so I'll put a little swirl in here, tuck it in nice and tight. Okay, and we'll just come back around and just smooth over. Now I can dip in here if I want to. You can dip in and bounce out. It's your call. I'm going to go ahead and leave this space open. This will give a little bit of extra fabric right in there without closing that so tightly. But if I need to close my gap before I move up on this side, I can just stitch back. Better to take care of that gap right there in my ditch right now. I don't want to come back later and have to go 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch, whatever. Fill it right there, move up, and then here we go. So now we've changed our curve a little bit. And just like we did on that other side, I'm going to kind of swoop in and then fill that in. Okay, that'll close that distance a little bit. And now I've got a great focal point and some visual interest. So let's go ahead and we'll move up in our line a little bit. Okay, now this one is going this way. Okay, I can go the other way too. So, okay, tuck it in, and I'm going to have to go around, and then this one will go this way. Okay, and I can change that angle a little bit. Pull this up so that this isn't too matchy-matchy right here. That's going to change right here and create some space. Now, I've got 2 focal points, so before I put any more in, I'm going to create some space. Okay, we'll dip this one a little closer there, and this one's going to just wing right over the top like that. Okay, so it's okay that this has got a little openness right there. Remember, we're okay with that. So get to your stitch line, travel up, and now same thing. Okay, I do want to keep some of those dips on purpose because those will help me as I go. Okay, so now here I'll make a nice big one. Okay, tuck it in. The foot is your guide, helping bring it right over the top, and then wing out a little bit. Okay, so now this is a little taller, so as we go, we're going to start having a little bit of work to kind of fill in that gap. Okay, so a little dip right there, a little closer here, so we're not getting too far ahead of ourselves. And then when I come out here, if I want to close this dip a little bit, I can just widen the gap here and narrow it over here. Okay, this is helping to pull us up so we can be in line with this part right here. Okay, and again, we'll just kind of float that, and just by doing that now, we're closer on the level. Now we can start putting in whatever curves we want. Okay, it's our choice. I don't want them all to stack right here, so I need to kind of create some dips a little bit further along so I can put some on the side. So I'm going to keep this one because I think right here that'll work well to put a little design on the corner edge. So, ooh, I didn't do what I told you. Let's go ahead and do it now. I would be in my seam, following right along. If you needed help to do that, you could always use a ruler to follow along your ditch. Just move very decisively. Try not to go super slowly. Look inside your foot. If you need to reposition your hands, don't be afraid to stop. Okay? And then just push up. Following in your line, I can look right down my foot, and then I'll keep moving up a little bit. So we've got a few lines in between. So let's go a different direction with this curve. Tuck it in. And this one kind of lets it float right easily over here. I don't have to like do anything crazy. Just float right over nice and smooth. And I'm going to keep that dip right there. And then as I pull up here, I'll put a design on this side. Okay, so we'll go this way on this side. And that way when we come back, we can go over the top. Okay, so we'll put another one in here just because we can. Okay, so closing that. And then moving up. Okay, and then we'll just do one more line and we'll go ahead and follow along. This dip is a little tight, I think, to put anything in, so as we go along, we'll kind of even it out a little bit. Right there was not enough, I think, to put a little design in, so we'll kind of float that a little bit. That'll close it on that side. We'll do another one. Let's make the next line just a little tighter, not quite so wide. Close, and just move up a little bit. So make it tight there, maybe a little bit dip right there, and tuck it in. And we'll create a bigger dip right here to create that space there by just pushing this up. So now I have a little room to fill that in. Okay, so following my line. Oh, my line doesn't go up that far. That's where I started. So we'll just follow it. And here we go. We'll put this last one in. And he can float above it. He doesn't have to fit in there. Different sizes are really great. I'll show you one more thing here. Let's do this. On this one, we'll change it up a little. We're going to go back this way. Okay, we'll close it. And now this time, this guy can kind of float over the top. So he kind of comes back this way. So sometimes if the stack is really tall, this might be a way you'll fill in this side. And then as we come over to this side, we'll have to work up this side a little bit to get him evened out a little bit. Okay, so we'll just come in. And then we can start moving right over the top again. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and cut the thread really quick, and we'll pull this section up so you could see it a little bit better. Now, would you be happy with a fill like that? This can be fast. It can fill up a large space. You can make these spaces bigger if you need. Let's see what the question is. I just saw a question that we want to maybe answer. All right, I'm going to pull up my computer so I can read your comments. Why to close the seam on the right but not on the left? They're actually both closed. This one's closed and this one is closed. Oh, yeah, just right there. I mean, I would close it. So somebody asked, would you close it? So we're assuming that this fill is inside of a space. If this was the edge of the quilt, I'd just go off the edge, right? I'd just travel on the batting and move up and do whatever I want. But typically, you're connecting to something. And that something could even be, not necessarily a block. Maybe I have an applique that cuts right here. So as I would be traveling, if this was the applique, I would be mindful of that and I would put my fill in. And as it came up to the applique, I would go to the applique edge, travel, and then come back out and fill right along it. So if this was some kind of separation that nothing of this background would go in there, I would use whatever that edge is, and that would be the travel line. There's no reason to stop and cut my thread and then move over to here and cut my thread and sew a little bit and cut my thread. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to find a way to move along as efficiently as I can so that I can keep sewing basically in a continuous motion as much as I want to. And you can see like the different swirls, different directions, how tight that you make them. This one's more like a hook. And I think that I don't like this one as well. I want to have more of this right here. So in some ways, I think that I kind of was trying to fill in that space. I think it'd be better to fill it in and come back out here and come over the top. But would I rip it out? I probably wouldn't. You know, when you put a ton of this in there, who's going to notice that? Just keep on sewing. It's fine. Okay, so let's see. Any other comments real quick? All right, so good practice. You know, the key is smooth movements. And we did curvy lines, straight lines. We did changes of spacing and how to navigate if things are getting uneven, stacking. You can always just create a new shape, a new space. And so there is that sample for today. Hopefully you'll try that with some of those background fills for yourself. They're great for filling in lots of empty space if you need that. And the key tenets were vary it up, add a focal point if necessary, and changes of direction. Those are the three things that are the learning objectives for this class, so that you can take those and apply them to any kind of quilting that you're doing. So have a terrific day. I plan to be on for our ruler work on the 29th, which is on Sunday at 3 o'clock Mountain Time. So have a terrific day and happy quilting. Bye, guys.